Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cultural Awareness in Dementia Care, an exploration of the lived experience of dementia in ethnocultural minority groups. Please note this webinar is being recorded. Before I open with a full introduction of our incredible panelists, I'm going to first introduce you to City of Maple Ridge Councillor Youssef, who has volunteered to lead our question and answer period at the end of this webinar. Youssef, would you like to say hello?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Ms. Stalman. Good morning or good afternoon. My apologies to everyone. And I'm delighted to be part of this wonderful initiative taken on by yourself and to be in such great company with our panelists. I very much look forward to the discussion. And most importantly, I look forward to learning lots from our panelists and of course, through the question and answer period. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Youssef. Next, I will pass the floor to local Maple Ridge business owner Warren Prokopich from Smart City ITS, who is managing the technical aspects of today's webinar. Warren?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Marissa, thank you for the invitation to help out.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Warren. And wow, we have such a wonderful group of people joining us today. Thank you for being here. Once again, I'd like to welcome you to Cultural Awareness in Dementia Care, an exploration of the lived experience of dementia in ethnocultural minority groups. My name is Marissa Stalman, and I'm a Simon Fraser Master's University student with the Department of Gerontology. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, and Kwantlen First Nations. I'm hosting this interactive webinar and awareness raising event because I believe that love can be spread and multiplied through knowledge dissemination, education, and storytelling. I applied to the United Way Lower Mainland for a local love grant with the aim of organizing a webinar that would draw attention to the different ways that dementia may be experienced, lived, and understood in some of BC's visible ethnocultural minority groups. The purpose is not to generalize based on culture and ethnicity, nor to segregate individuals in any way. This webinar is meant to increase our awareness about the need to personalize dementia care, both for the person living with dementia and their family, carers, and caregivers. In 2016, according to the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, there was an estimated 564,000 Canadians living with dementia, and it is anticipated that this number will nearly double by the year 2030. Furthermore, it has been estimated that 62 to 87% of residents in Canadian care homes have dementia or some form of cognitive impairment. Loneliness in persons with dementia is a chronic and systemic issue in British Columbia and beyond. Much of the education and training provided to healthcare practitioners around dementia remains very Eurocentric. The organization of this webinar has been influenced by both Kitwood's person-centered care principles and Crenshaw's theory of intersectionality. Those who know me well know that I'm a proponent of person-centered care. PCC encourages us to remember that a person living with dementia is a person in the fullest sense. He or she is still an agent, one who can make things happen in the world, a sentient, a relational and historical human being. I'm also a fan of the theory of intersectionality, which suggests that people's lives are multidimensional and complex, and that lived experiences are shaped by different factors and social dynamics operating together. 4 incredible panelists come today to share their lived experiences, research findings, methods, and personal stories with you. In the context of the current pandemic, we have seen that older adults have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19, particularly those in long-term care. Incredible efforts are being made by our communities and some of you on this call to protect our most vulnerable from this virus. But we cannot forget that dementia is not on lockdown. Thousands of Canadians are living with the realities of dementia every day. Now is the time to engage in conversations and webinars, for that matter, that have the potential to improve our understandings, not only of the disease of dementia, but of the individuals whose lives who have been impacted by it. This webinar will begin with presentations from 2 of our 4 panelists, after which we will take a 10-minute break. Following the break, we will hear from our final 2 panelists and then commence the question and answer period. I would like to remind you to please not use the chat box during this webinar, as it can be very distracting to our panelists. But you can pose your questions in the question and answer box. Thank you. Our first panelist is Nadine Johns. Nadine has a Master's of Science in Clinical and Health Psychology and is a coach and registered clinical counselor in British Columbia and a psychologist in the Netherlands. She has gained over 15 years of experience working with individuals, families, and professional care providers to manage high levels of stress, anxiety, trauma, anger, overeating, guilt, depression, and aging-related issues. Nadine is also the creator of the Experience-Centered Care with Heart methodology, a cutting-edge system that provides a step-by-step framework to significantly improve behaviors, moods, and relationships for both the care partner and person with dementia, so that they can experience more calm, connection, and meaning in their lives. The title of Nadine's presentation is How to Significantly Reduce Fear and Anger of People with Dementia and Increase Quality of Life with the Heart methodology. Immediately following Nadine, we will hear from Dr. Sharon Cohen. Dr. Cohen is a medical anthropologist and social gerontologist with a long track record of community-engaged research devoted to advancing society's ability to address inequities experienced by marginalized populations. She will draw on a series of national and local research projects funded by SSHRC, CIHR, and the Alzheimer's Society of Canada that have explored the experiences of dementia and accesses to service by older immigrants. South Asian communities have been featured in all of these studies. The title of Dr. Cohen's presentation is Dementia at the Crossroads of Culture and Immigration, Punjabi and Korean Experiences. Nadine, the floor is yours.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Marissa, for organizing this event. And thank you so much for everybody. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here with you all. And it was about 15 years ago when I started my internship in the Netherlands as a psychologist. And I started my internship for a large organization involved with dementia care, nursing care, complex care, all kinds of care, and even in the community. And my role as a psychologist intern was to really learn the skills, familiarize myself with the older adults in care homes and residents and supporting them with behaviors and moods. And I remember it was one afternoon early on. I wasn't really familiar with dementia at that time. And I was sitting in a living room of a dementia unit, of a dementia neighborhood with the residents who lived there. And I was really there to observe the interactions, observing people interacting with each other, the staff, and really get a sense of how it works on a dementia care unit. And everything was going really well. It was really lovely afternoon, except for one lady. I noticed this woman sitting in the corner, and her name was Angie, and she didn't react to anyone. She didn't respond to anything, and she was really in her own world, and she seemed very depressed. And all of a sudden, she would stand up and she started to shake and she was really upset. And it was as if the world in front of her had split apart. And it was not clear what happened to her, but she was standing there shaking and really upset. So a nurse ran towards her and told her, Angie, what's going on? Just sit down. Why are you so upset? Just sit down and relax. But Angie didn't respond to that, and she continued to shake and was really upset and crying. So the nurse said, Angie, come on, just sit down. Here's your coffee. And Angie didn't want to hear any of that. And she slapped the coffee on the floor. And it just didn't go well. And in that moment, a long forgotten memory resurfaced. I must have been 5 years old when I would wake up every night crying and feeling so upset and so lost. And I didn't really know and understand what was going on at that time. And it wasn't until later when I was an adult that I could describe what I was feeling as a 5-year-old. And it was loneliness. And in that moment when I was observing Angie, I remembered that feeling very strongly. And I realized my deepest fear. My deepest fear is not getting dementia, even though that is so devastating and really hard. My deepest fear is also not a family member developing dementia. That happened later on. A couple of years later, my dad developed dementia. My deepest fear is getting dementia and not being seen anymore. Getting dementia and not being heard anymore, or not being taken seriously anymore. And from that moment on, my biggest fear became my biggest drive. And I was adamant to learn everything and anything I could to help people with dementia. Because I know one day it might be me, it might be my husband, it might be my family, it might be anyone, even my children. And I want to make sure that we can do everything and anything to improve quality of life for dementia. So this is how I learned so much from experts, from people with dementia, from caregivers, from professionals. All these people have helped me understand more. And I'm sure there's so much more that we all need to learn continuously as we move forward with helping with people with dementia. And now I want to share my insights, what I've learned so far. And for this, I'm going to open my PowerPoint here. And that takes me a little minute. And I will start from the beginning. And I'm not able to share my screen at this point, but that's okay. I will ask the host to enable screen sharing, and then I can go to the PowerPoint, but I can easily do this without PowerPoint. And I really want to start at the beginning. The question, what is dementia? And dementia is really just a name for a couple symptoms. And these symptoms include difficulties in thinking, and not just a little bit. I struggle with thinking all the time, often, or I forget things, but it's about significant changes in functioning. So it's really about changes in the thinking, and to the extent that it significantly impacts daily life and functioning. Now, always a doctor needs to be included in determining whether there is a dementia, because there's a lot of conditions and diseases that mimic symptoms of dementia. So, for example, depression can actually cause similar symptoms. So a doctor is always necessary, or needs to be included to determine whether it's actually a dementia syndrome or if it's something else. Now, assuming it is established there is a dementia syndrome, then we need to know what is causing the dementia. And it's always brain damage or brain impairment. And so we need to know what is causing this brain damage. And there's many different potential causes. And the most common one is Alzheimer's disease. But it can also be caused by stroke. So we would call that vascular dementia. There are other neurological diseases, so diseases in the brain that cause enough damage that we can speak of a dementia syndrome. Even a car accident can, if it causes enough brain damage, can result in a dementia. So there's many different diseases and causes, and the most common one is Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's disease is a neurological disorder that starts slowly, even long before the first symptoms are noticed, even long before we have any idea that someone has Alzheimer's disease. And this disease causes neurons, brain cells, to malfunction, and eventually these will die, or regions in the brain will not be able to function properly. And so over time, more and more brain damage occurs. And this is what we see for the person with dementia. The behaviors are changing, the abilities are changing. And this is all because of the brain damage. Now, so far with Alzheimer's disease and many of the other neurological disorders, there is no cure. And this is really hard. And fortunately, there's a lot of research working on this. Researchers are working on this. But until then, we need to make sure that we can create the right quality of life for people who live with dementia. Now, and I want to share with you some really key insights that we can use in providing the right care and support for people with brain damage. And I'm going to check if I can see. Yes, I can start to share my screen, so you should be able to see it. And I'm going to skip some of the slides that I was just talking about, and I'm going to the HEART methodology. And if we first, before I go share some of the insights, ways to improve quality of life, I want to touch on the brain. If we look at the brain, we now can, the brain is very complex, of course, but we can really simplify the brain and divide it in 4 parts. And here I'm going to really even go more simple. If we divide the brain in 2 halves, the neocortex, the thinking brain, which is our top part of the brain, and the subcortical brain, which are the lower parts of the brain. That includes the emotional brain, that includes the brain stem, which directly is connected with the nervous system. And the brain is part of the nervous system in the body. Now, with Alzheimer's disease, we know that most damage occurs on the thinking level. And this means that a lot of, a big part of the brain is still functioning, which is primarily the subcortical brain, the emotional brain, is still functioning. And this is the subconscious part of the brain. The thinking brain is our conscious part. And the subconscious part of the brain is where emotions are regulated. This is where trauma lives. This is where a lot of the important functions are regulated. And of course, we need all parts of the brain to function well, to function properly. Now, with Alzheimer's disease specifically, but we can apply this to a lot of people, the brains with damage. The lower parts of the brain have more power now, which means that it's harder to regulate the emotions. So a person with dementia, and this applies to all people, responds much more to stimuli in the environment and how people present. We all do this. We have this emotional brain, and it's really important for our emotional brain to feel safe. And this is why we react to potential threats, to predators, scary people, scary animals, and we have the fight, flight, and freeze response. And this is regulated in those lower parts of the brain. Now, we also have some help with the thinking brain that we can sort of manage our emotions, and we're not going to scream and yell immediately if there's something that seems off, and we're able to assess and manage our behaviors and moods. But for people with brain damage in the thinking brain, that becomes harder, and the responses and behaviors become more depending on how the brain perceives the environment. Now, I need to really go quickly over this, but I'm hoping it makes sense. So I have gathered some insights that are helpful when we are engaging with a person with dementia. Our lower parts of the brain are also constantly scanning whether other people or situations, again, are safe or not. This happens subconsciously. We all do this. And this is where the brain picks up on if someone else is stressed, our brain will know, oh, there's some danger because that person is stressed, is in a fight flight. And we do this subconsciously. We are not even aware. But this is what people with dementia also do. And so it's really important when we engage with a person that we open up our hearts and mind and really come in the present moment and really come with an open attitude and with a loving approach. And this is what we needed to do with Angie, who was so upset. We needed to hold her hand if that's appropriate. So this is very individual and depending on culture, individual, and really connecting with an open heart and forget about dementia, forget about everything else, and really come in that moment with that person in front of you. And here, I also want to address a lot of myths. We talk about symptoms of dementia, behavioral symptoms, for example, BPSD, psychological and behavioral symptoms of dementia. I don't resonate with this term because symptoms implies that it's just part of the dementia and it's sort of something that we don't really understand. But when we look at it as the behaviors, even though they seem strange, they're actually normal reactions to an abnormal situation. The brain will always adjust to make sense of the environment and then produces reactions that are making sense for that individual, for that person. And so when a person is anxious and is resistant to care or to any help, even though it doesn't make sense because you as a care person want to just help make life better for that individual. When we look at it as, when we step into the person's world and really understand that individual's experience, we will move forward. We will be able to connect. And that is also includes creating the right environment. And the brain will connect with the environment, often based on data from the younger years, childhood years, young adult. So it needs to be old-fashioned, but this really depends on the culture and environment where a person grew up. So that may be a better environment to resonate with. Now, there's so much I want to share with you quickly. Christmas is something in the environment that a lot of people with dementia resonate with, so we need to take advantage of that. But I also want to talk about how important it is to attune and connect with the feelings. People with dementia connect just like other people with you being present and attuned to their feelings. Now, there's so much more that I want to share with you, so I quickly run over this, but the most important is connecting from the present moment. Connect with your true self, calming, making sure that you're calm and making sure that you're regulated so that connecting is working with the other person, the person with dementia. And here I want to share this slide. We can come back to this later also, where you can connect with the Alzheimer's Society, the first link, dementia helpline, when you have any question, when you need support, when you really have more questions to ask. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. And I will go back to give the stage back to Marissa.
Thank you so much, Nadine. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Sharon Cohen.
All right, so hi, Sharon Cohen here, speaking to you from unceded Coast Salish territory, currently known as Kitsilano, Vancouver. Thanks so much to all of you for your interest in this neglected topic, and to Marissa Stalman for bringing us all together today. So why focus on immigrant older adults? Well, according to StatsCan estimates, almost half of the population over 60 is likely to be foreign-born within 40 years or so. Most of those arrive as younger immigrants and age here, but a small proportion are brought over late in life to join their families, often to assist with childcare. While fewer in number, this group tends to be the most marginalized. Timing of migration is one way in which older immigrants differ from one another, and of course they come here from many different countries, speak many languages, and have varying levels of English proficiency. Significantly, an increasing number are considered visible minorities and very often experience racialization. The incredible diversity found among immigrant older adults is often overlooked by people making policies and programs that affect them, and in the academic literature as well. Despite their varied backgrounds, however, we have found in different studies that older immigrants share experiences of common structural stressors that disproportionately impact them. And that is what I would like to talk to you about in this presentation. And to do that, I'm going to be drawing on interviews we conducted for a study funded by the Alzheimer's Society of Canada. As Marissa mentioned in the introduction, this is one of a series of research projects I have conducted with immigrant older adults with dementia. Among these, most have featured South Asian older adults. Koreans are less commonly researched in Canada, but I have gained more familiarity with some of the unique strengths and challenges of this population from another study that is not focused on dementia, and this informs some of my interpretations. One of those studies is the Lived Experiences Project, and I'd like to acknowledge that this photo and several others in this presentation are from that project as well. So here are the acronyms that you will see attached to quotes in combination with one another, and they tell you who is saying what. As I present, I typically leave it up to you to read the quotes, and I will be providing the main message. If you cannot read the quotes as quickly as I speak or at the same time, don't worry. I will let you know how you can access these slides later. They're just to back up what I'm saying and connect them to the project. So for the Alzheimer's Society of Canada study, we interviewed 15 dyads or pairs of people with dementia and their family care partners. 10 were Punjabi speaking and 5 were Korean speaking. Korean dementia dyads were extremely hard to recruit. These dyads were living in community or in independent seniors living. People with dementia and their care partners were interviewed separately to capture both the lived experience of the person with dementia and the care partner's capacity for recall and distinct needs for support. We also conducted focus groups with older and working age adults from the Punjabi and Korean communities to provide insights into the broader community's understanding of dementia and the services available. Working age adults were included because immigrant families are reported to be highly instrumental in determining whether or not older immigrants receive appropriate medical attention. So let's get into what we found. To start with, getting the help you need in a timely fashion is crucial to the quality of life that people can experience when they or a loved one is living with dementia. But people run into many obstacles along the way, and some of these are more common or unique to older immigrants, although there is variation among them. First, the person with dementia and or someone close to them must identify the symptoms as abnormal and in need of medical attention and or social supports. The barriers listed here can overlap, so let's look at them in a little more depth. Of course, a person's knowledge of the signs and symptoms of dementia depend on many intersections of identity besides their current country of origin. Age, gender, education, exposure through one's occupation, or caregiving other family members all play a role no matter the population. Yet our participants pointed to some widely held beliefs within their communities that bear consideration. For example, the Punjabi family care partner cited in the first quote here said of her husband's dementia, "It is not normal aging and it is not a contagious disease." But her interactions with others in her community have revealed that many do not share this understanding. Of course, the people we interviewed as dyads had a heightened exposure to and hence understanding of the illness based on their lived experience of it. That said, some people with dementia did not recognize that they had an illness and denied any knowledge of it. In these examples, we see how the tension in the relationship between daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law in patrilocal families, whereby women go to live with their husband and his parents after marriage, can preclude identification of dementia. This arrangement is common in many Asian cultures, among others. Because men traditionally have power in the family, there is an inherent tension between the incoming wife and the mother-in-law, since both need to secure the allegiance of the son or husband that unites them. This tension is exacerbated when older adults are sponsored by adult children and are rendered dependent on them for 20 years. So in the first Korean example, you see in the quotes, a daughter-in-law attributed the dementia symptoms in her mother-in-law to the nature of this relationship. Similarly, the members of a Punjabi focus group referenced the likelihood that an older woman will not get along with her daughter-in-law and hence will not wish to reveal her concerns about the symptoms she is experiencing. An impediment to both identification and help seeking is the problem of stigma. Seniors and working age adults in these examples that here in both communities spoke to the stigma attached to dementia. Some Korean and Punjabi seniors are unwilling to disclose a dementia diagnosis because they fear judgment, not only of themselves, but their entire family. Family care partners in both communities related how they had experienced the shaming firsthand. Other researchers who have compared stigma in different communities conclude that a stigma against Europeans tends to be based on the shame of having a disease as a sign of weakness, whereas the concerns of racialized non-Europeans focus on the implications this may have about their behavior in past lives, or the implied lack of care shown by the family that seeks help from services, as seen here in our second quote. Both bring shame upon the family as a whole. After identifying a need for medical attention or social supports, people must then navigate their way to them by finding appropriate services and physically getting there. But there are lots of barriers as well as some facilitators. Koreans, especially the young old, but not the old, are more familiar with computers and readily look to the internet for information. Working age adult Punjabis said they generally turned on to the internet for information on dementia, but that lower education levels may preclude this. And older adults in the Punjabi community did not mention the internet as a source of information. Rather, they relied on informal networks, often in connection with religious establishments such as gurdwaras, or in the case of Koreans, churches as well. Close proximity of family members helps people to access the services they need. Families seek out information, drive them to appointments, and interpret as needed. But as the last quote reveals, it may sometimes preclude reaching out to formal services because the family may think there are plenty of us, we've got this. Living together as an extended family is more common among Punjabis than Koreans. Importantly, though, not all family members can or will provide the supports that the person with dementia needs to navigate to healthcare and other services, and also to live comfortably and well with dementia. And it's critical that service providers do not assume that these supports are in place based on the person's ethnicity. Once in the doctor's office, the person with dementia and possibly a family care provider must be able to present their need for formal assistance in such a way that the physician can recognize the need and will follow through with an appropriate referral or other next steps. Again, the family is often critical at this stage, most especially for their ability to interpret, as we've already seen. These same barriers are also salient along the continuum of care. For example, language incongruency with healthcare providers is very common and complicates assistance, whether it be from home support, home care, or physicians. When they cannot speak the same language, older adults worry that they cannot communicate their needs and feelings. Some said they use interpretation services or younger family members to overcome these barriers. None of these solutions is ideal, though. For example, one older Korean woman explained how she relied on and paid her grandson, who was in grade 6, to accompany her to doctor's appointments as her interpreter, which opens a door to innumerable practical and ethical concerns. Others said they had to pay out of pocket at a rate of about $50 an hour for interpreters. The need for more healthcare providers who spoke their language was a common refrain. The style of communication and the limited time that physicians spend with patients to explain what is happening is very disorienting for immigrant older adults. Punjabis especially emphasize this, as in the first quote here. This group also tends to think of the healthcare professionals, especially physicians, as authority figures that they cannot question, which can also impede communication. As in the second quote, Koreans were most likely to differ in their approach to medication, which is typically administered more readily in Korea. More Punjabis and Koreans in our sample said they have physicians who spoke their language, but language congruence with specialists, such as geriatricians, is less common. However, people with dementia and their care partners still struggle to communicate because healthcare professionals don't give them enough time nor provide enough details during the appointments. Active listening, making eye contact, and avoiding harsh words were suggested as ways to make people with dementia and their family members feel respected and increase their trust in the healthcare providers. Of course, there's more to culturally congruent care than being able to speak the language or being from the same cultural background. The consensus among our Korean participants was that, in general, they preferred doctors in Korea, but many could not afford to go back for consultations. However, Korean doctors in Canada who were chosen for their language skills were deemed to be unsatisfactory in their attitude, most likely due to their Western training. So let's sum up our findings then. We see that culturally mediated views of aging and illness in combination with low levels of education sometimes and literacy sometimes served as barriers to recognition of behaviors as symptoms of dementia requiring medical help. Limited understanding of dementia in both communities contributed to stigmatization of the disease. Family involvement can add barriers or introduce opportunities and benefits for dementia diagnosis and care, but some participants, especially in the Korean community, indicated that adult children were not always readily available to locate services and provide much needed transportation and interpretation. Koreans were more likely than Punjabis to have access to computers and seek out information on the internet, but there were fewer services in the community for Korean speakers compared to those for Punjabis. And participants identified Punjabi temples and Korean churches as important sources of influence through which dementia information could be conveyed. So to conclude, culture is important, but it's not the whole story. Immigration intersects with it, and the timing and type of immigration, which we didn't have time to dig into deeply today, influence both access to care and experience of dementia. Additionally, differences between and within communities are important, and all of these factors must be considered when developing interventions. So, thank you all for listening. If you would like a copy of these slides, please visit my website and select areas of expertise, and then dementia care, where you'll find a link to the slides under the Building Trust project. And I would also encourage you to poke around in there, because with the Alzheimer's Society of BC and with immigrant serving agencies, my research team has developed a series of tools, some in Korean, some directed at Punjabis, some more general, that you may find interesting, and you're welcome to download from the site. And these appear in the panel on the front page and also under Building Trust. So once again, thank you very much. And that ends my presentation. I'll stop sharing. There we go. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cohen, for your research and for sharing that with us today. And our next two speakers are Alice Lung and Elder Kat Norris. Alice is a licensed practical nurse. Born in Hong Kong, Alice first lived in Edmonton when her family immigrated to Canada. She and her family moved to British Columbia to retire 5 years ago. Alice cares for her husband, who is living with early onset dementia. As a retired nurse, Alice provides a unique perspective on caring for a loved one with dementia. Alice will share her experiences caring for her husband during 3 stages. She will also share her frustrations with having a loved one living in long-term care during a pandemic. The title of Alice's presentation is Dementia Care for My Loved One. Our final speaker will be Elder Kat Norris. You may have heard Elder Kat on CBC News Radio this morning. As an elder, Kat is a cultural educator speaking at universities and neighborhood houses in the Lower Mainland. Kat also teaches drumming and powwow dancing at elementary schools in the neighborhood. She is a grandmother and finds that taking care of and sharing knowledge with the next generation is a form of activism. Elder Kat has experienced firsthand the inequities faced by Indigenous elders in the context of dementia care. As an activist and family caregiver, Kat calls for the proper diagnosis and care of Indigenous persons living with dementia. She would also like to see education and awareness amongst her own people about how to access help for those with dementia. Elder Kat will share some of her own cultural understandings and traditions related to aging and dementia. The title of Kat's presentation is Challenging the Inequities, Informed Dementia Care for Indigenous Elders. Without further ado, I welcome Ms. Alice Lung. Alice?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Okay. First of all, I would like to thank you, Marissa, to give me this opportunity to share the dementia care. And my name is Alice. I am a caregiver to my husband. His name is Tony. He used to be a CMA accountant, and he has Alzheimer's disease more than 10 years. Now he is living in the nursing home. Before 55 years old, I find Tony already have a change on his daily living. So after that, I take him to see the doctor. Because of his age, the doctor don't realize that he got this kind of the disease. So then we go for quite a bit of the exam and the test. Unfortunately, the exam coming up is negative. After that, we still going on to look for the medical assistant. We go for free as a specialist. By the time around 55 years old, finally, he already diagnosis is early onset dementia, and he is 55 years old only. Now he is 66 years old. Then he will get to start the medication. But before the start the medication, we really have a really frustration time for both of us. First of all, a lot of argument. The argument is much more than the marriage 10 times more than the marriage life. Another problem is coming up is the financing problem, from 2 income and down to 1 income. And because Tony is forgot how to deal with the money, that part, the financing part. So the telephone cut off. His parents' rent didn't go through. The mortgage is owed the bank, the mortgage for a few months already. And this is very, very frustration. And I am very depressed too. Okay, I get the recommendation from Alzheimer's Society, and then I attend some workshop. And I remember one is called supportive pathway. That the meaning is Alzheimer is a long journey. We need a lot of support for them. So, and I also have a lot of support from my friends. So after that, then to take the medication, then he started the medication. Then I set up the care plan. So first of all, I make him to independent. Okay, for example, self-medication, okay, the shower, dress all by himself, but I need to monitor them. The laundry, every time I do the laundry, I put the underwear in the different colors. The purpose is I want to make him to know which one is dirty and which one is clean. Then he can do it by himself. I also shopping with him, and I let him have a choices. Whatever he like to buy, I just let them do it. And also, and then traveling, we still go for traveling. We went for 3 long trip. The first trip is we went to China, and then we went to Taiwan, and then we went to Japan. But of course, the traveling is not that easy, especially when we are in the security part. Okay, because some of the country, they're really complicated and they don't realize what is the Alzheimer's disease, and they still make him to do a lot of things, and then that is really hard, that part. The time is keep going, and then we go out for meal with the friends and then everything. So, but because the disease is progressive, okay, after that, okay, from monitoring from the beginning, and then we'll go to curing, and then go to the total care. So it takes about almost 10 years. Then we'll go to the final stage. Okay, by the time year 2019, and the care is almost total care. And I realized that is a really heavy care for me. Another thing is we're living in a condo. The condo is unsafe for him. And the major concern is because I have a heart problem, I'm worried one day I will die before Tony. So that's why I decided to transfer him to the long-term care. But by the time, okay, I am a Chinese, okay, for those, a lot of Chinese people, they really concerning about the culture food, is that means they like to eat Chinese food. Then for those people, they have to really careful to choose the long-term care. So is it the long-term care they provide a Chinese food? What about the language barrier? What about the recreation program? For this kind of the things, we really have to pay attention for it. But for Tony, it's okay, and because he can speak English, he have no language barrier, and he can eat all kinds of the food. Then the Chinese food is not really necessary for him. But for myself, I'm really concerned about the recreation program, because he's there every day. Okay, then if the recreation program is not suitable for him, okay, it is like the end of the world. Why I'm there? Because he already talked to the people. Why I am there? Where is my wife? For this kind of the sad, it's so sad. So, and then it's away for a while, and then end up we got a really good long-term care. So, and then they provide a very good food, and also the dietitian is really care about him. And the recreation program, they always have a music program. The music program is always singing about the older song. That's all he like it, and he know how to sing too. So the day is go really happy actually. So by the time but anyway, but because of the pandemic coming, so it's a lot of things I cannot do anymore. So before that, when he was at the long-term care, I still provide a care. Every day I'll go there to give him an extra care. Okay, so according to the funding, okay, they cannot give him a bath every day. So every day I'll go there, and then I give him a really good sponge bath. I wash his hair. I make sure and soak his feet and make sure everything to dress warm. If the weather change, and then I arrange all those outfits is suitable for him, and I soak his feet every day. And then at the same time, I do the food care. For this kind of the things, the nursing home cannot provide for the resident every day. And then plus every time I go there, at least I got more chance to communicate with the staff, and I know how's his progress doing. Day by day is already there. Okay, it's around more than 6 months already. So it's really happy, and also I feel good too, because at least I got a chance to see him every day. But when the pandemic come and then the facility locked down, I cannot see him anymore. Then I only can see him is by the window, and I feel really upset about it. And I'm so worried about who's going to wash him, who's going to give him a care every day like me. Definitely it's not, okay? Then I talk to the facility. Since they reopen, I talk to the facility. I request, can I have one day to go to give Tony a care? At least I give him extra bath. But they said no, because of the standard from the government. So from that on is I will feel really sad, and I even don't know how to handle it. So I just upset myself, but I talk to myself, even though I'm so frustrated, but what can I do? I just hope the government can consider the families, the emotion and the mentally. So I hope they can make the rule is more balanced. It's not only lock down the unit, because every time when we go there, we always wear the PPE. We have a gown, we have a mask. Okay, the purpose of to wear those PPE is just to spread of the infection, but they still cannot give us to extra care for them. So hopefully the pandemic is over. I hope this I can go back to see my husband more. So, and no matter how the journey is so long, and I really, really miss my husband, I will continue to hold his hand until the end. So for this time, okay, supporting, I really know I need to support my husband. And another side is when the people that you know, if they have a friend, the family have Alzheimer's disease. So it is very good to support the caregiver too. So if my friend call me, okay, hi Alice, how are you doing? How's your husband? You know how I appreciate whatever they talk to me. Otherwise, is I'm so lonely. Okay, I just everything I frustrating, and I'm sad, and everything I sitting in the room, it just so unhappy of myself. If somebody can call me, then it makes the world is different. And I don't have that much to say anyway. So it's just about like this, okay? But this is really Alzheimer. It's a long journey. Okay, for that 10 years, I still remember it. I really miss my husband, even though I have a really hard time. Okay, and it is in my memory. It's in my long-term memory. It's in my memories library. So even though those hard work. And then I wish I still can do it again or more, but I cannot do it anymore because he belongs to the late stage. Hopefully, we can go together for more longer. And that's all. And thank you for all of you to listen to me. And my mother tongue is not English. I hope everybody excuse me. And by the end, I wishing everybody have a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice, for sharing your story with us. I will now move on to the introduction of someone I'm quite honored to have participating in our webinar, Elder Kat Norris.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, Anta Zukamawat. Nimo I Square. It's a good day today. We look at each day that we're alive as a new day. Yes, I have an 82-year-old mother that we had tried to get help for. But I wanted to start off with saying that, our elders, we use the term elders in all of our communities all across Turtle Island, meaning all across North America. We still look at this land as one land. We share a lot of similar teachings, however diverse we are, from sailors to the Cree to down south. We're all one big family. We, we're concerned about, when our mother started to change. She had 2 different strokes, and a lot of it had to do with my mother worked hard all of her life. She raised all of us, kept us all together. The only time she couldn't keep us together was when we were forced to go to residential school. When I was a child in the 60s, it was still the law that they had to let their children go. Now, my mother and my father were both survivors, so they tried to fight it, but were told that if you don't let your children go to this school, if you don't let us take them, we're going to take them and you'll never see them again. So that was her first big stressor. And, stress is one of the indicators of in old age of developing the mental illnesses and the medical issues and dementia. So that was something that she carried, all her life, that guilt, because she'd gone through it and always asking us, are we okay? Asking us if anything happened, let me know. And, we hold in high regard, like I said, our elders. And when my mother started to be called to go do work, meaning they would call her to do openings, they would call her to share teachings, call her to teach our language. She was always busy. And unfortunately, I think that was part of the beginning of her health issues. Because quite a while back when they would travel, they had a lot of donuts and pastries and heavy carb food to feed the people that were their guests. And so we think that not getting enough rest and wrong foods were led to her first stroke. And after her second stroke, she lost the ability to walk. And so she was in a wheelchair. And it was probably, I would say, only about 4 years ago that things started to change. And, she became more forgetful. And as a mother who was always so strong, her biceps were bigger than any man I've ever known, because she helped her father on the fishboat most of her young life. And so the forgetfulness, seemed to be a norm. So we didn't think too much about it. But it was when she started to get upset if we asked her, well, where did you put it, Mom? Where was the last place you put it? And she would get upset, stressed, like, I don't know. And so we started to realize there was something wrong, because it was a 1-bedroom apartment. And, but then, she started to get more and more upset at not, if we asked her too many questions, because normally we had the same kind of voice. So I always talked to her the same way. I talk fast. And she would ask me to slow down a little bit. She didn't understand. And, so I started to get quite concerned. And it was when she thought she was hearing someone crying. And she told me that on the phone in previous conversations. But at my weekend stay over there, she asked me if I heard, and I said, no, I can't hear it. So to me, in our culture, I thought that meant she's getting close to her time, to go move on to the other side, because in our culture, our children are closest to our ancestors. They can see them and talk to them. And then as they get older, when they're ready to go, they're again closer to our ancestors. So I accepted that, and I was praying, praying for calm for myself. And I hope she doesn't go too soon. But I soon realized we were in more trouble. So I tried to get help for her. I asked my doctor about her medications. I Googled all of her medications in her pack to see if any one of them may cause, these symptoms of hers. But none of them seemed to. So I was trying to avoid taking her in, saying that I think there's something wrong, because I didn't really know what was wrong. No one assumes that their parent is going to get Alzheimer's or dementias, and you don't want to talk about it amongst your family. But eventually we all finally start talking about it, and I tried to get help for her, and I made an appointment with her doctor. But the problem is that he just dismissed it as her getting old. And I tried to talk with him, and I said, can't we, no, she's going to be okay. If it persists, give me a call again. So he shoot out the door. But her situation got a little more concerning, to where the home support was letting me know, and letting my brother know. So I made another appointment, and I took her with this determination that I've got to get her the right help, the right assessment. But it was still treated the same. He had his face into the computer. And so I pushed my mother out. I walked right back in. I said, listen, we need to get support and help for my mother. Because the more I Googled for what might be wrong, the more I realized or learned that you need to get help right away. You need to get assessment early on. And so he said that he would look into it. But it was about 2 months later or so that I realized, we're not getting a call from this guy. So I utilized our Indigenous health services on the island, the community nurses, who were great help to my mother, visiting her and bringing her fruit and things. And so they helped. Actually, they're the ones who helped us to get an assessment. They contacted the caseworker. But that's the other issue with our people, is how our elders are treated. I was always concerned about how she would be treated by others who don't understand why she can't really speak, or she gets kind of confused. She will forget, and rat-a-tat-tat. So I phoned and asked if that could change, to take a little more care, talk a little more slowly. And so the caseworker with me there, I made sure that I was there. I traveled over to the island and sat with her while she did the test. And there was a lot of questions and little like hand-eye coordination tests. But it was done so, like I say, rat-a-tat-tat, I was getting upset for my mother. And I said, can you please, just slow down a little bit? I said, it's even too fast for me. And but she had a hard time slowing down. So I'm thinking, I wonder how many other elders are dealing with this. My mother did her best, and she actually did pretty good. So it was kind of left at that. But it was a fall that my mother had, and a home care worker gave me a call, and asked me what she should do. I said, you know, can you call the ambulance? She called the ambulance, or she said she would call me back. So when they arrived, I asked her, can you please let them know that my mother has had 2 strokes, so that's a concern of mine. So she put me on the phone. And I did that with intent because I wanted her to get checked out, you know, and I knew that they would do a scan. And she ended up staying in hospital for quite a while, so, which was sad, but good at the same time, you know. But that was when the doctor finally got on board. And I'm not sure you can hear my voice, but it's just so upsetting. And, you know, the indicators of our people, you know, not getting the right help historically has everything to do with contact, has everything to do with, you know, government, you know, their authoritarian view over our people that they manufactured in order to have society believe that we were less than, you know, and, you know, the inequities that we face as Indigenous people sort of preclude our ability to want to get help for ourselves. Therefore, a lot of us wait too long before we get help. And with any issue, you know, for me, it's lupus. For mother, it's, you know, her issue. A lot of our people wait too long to get help because we don't know how we're going to get treated when we walk in the door and start that reception every time. You know, if we're treated well by the receptionist, we kind of know, oh, good. You know, we shouldn't have to wonder, you know, about how we're going to get treated, you know, at a restaurant. When we walk, as soon as you walk out the door, my mother used to always tell us, put your warrior spirit on before you walk out the door, to be, you know, to be strong, and always walk like you know where you're going. My mother is so knowledgeable. She still speaks our language, you know, but I would like people to know out there in the world, and each one of you listening, that our elders, you know, have been through a lot. They've been through war. They've been through prisoner of war camps called the reservation system that people don't know, that was places we were shunted onto to be controlled and governed by other legislation, not including the regular population. You know, at the reservation level, we were not allowed to gather in our ceremonies. We weren't allowed to teach our children. It was against the law to start a business, to hire a lawyer. It was against the law to teach our children. It was against the law to leave for our men to provide for our people. And, you know, so that was the beginning of you can't do this, you can't do that, you're not allowed to do this, you can't do that. Eventually there was a pass system where we had to have a pass to leave and a pass to come back. But, you know, then came the residential school system. They went after the children because it took too long to go after the adults. So, because our adults were very knowledgeable, you know, so as you know, thousands upon thousands of children starting off their young lives, where most kids are playing up, you know, in parks and riding their bikes, we were all stuck in residential school. You can't do this, you can't do that. Nothing was good enough, whatever we did. You know, so a lot of us are dealing with health issues that we wouldn't have to deal with if we didn't have to go through all of that, you know, and my mother was a survivor of all that. So I would say that if she were to be diagnosed, she would have, we would have lived with her dealing with depression and PTSD and the anxieties. And because that's what I deal with. That's what I actually got diagnosed. So my role in this world is, I feel that I've gone through a lot because I have a voice and I want to share with my people. I try to help avoid our young people to go through what we went through, to get your voice now, to learn your confidence, take courses, get involved in community, and stop the fear, stop the negative cycle. Yes, there are truths in what our people are dealing with, but yes, the truth is there that we come from a beautiful and strong history. And I right now where my mother is because of her stay. She had visits from my brother, who works at a treatment center on the island, South Lalem. We had a meeting with me on the phone, my other sister on the phone, and my brother and my mother. And we talked about, her care. To live with my brother or my sister in Nanus, a lot of the houses are built with high stairs. And so to get anywhere, she'd have to do the stairs and bring her wheelchair down. And the ideal place would be right here with me in Vancouver, but she doesn't want to move to Vancouver and she refuses. But what I really want to ask people, is to, when they talk to my mother, to see the human inside of her. She's still very strong. She's very social. She's very engaging. And, I just wanted to, put the word out that, we as people are human beings, just like everyone else, but we've been through a war. And now we go through our own inner wars, trying to deal with, what we've experienced. And what we experience, people don't realize what we deal with on a daily basis, just walking out the door, getting service. Those are all causes of stress that lead to mental health issues, lead to physical health issues. And I believe it's a big part of why, I have my health, I've had high blood pressure, etc. And now I have to be concerned for my health in terms of the dementias, because no one wants to acquire it. And we don't know if it's happening, so I'm doing all of the oils, the fish oil, because we can't get fish, we can't get the right food. So diet is a big issue amongst our people. We can't, I would say people shouldn't really go hunting anymore because we don't know what the animals are eating, and, a duck is a favorite. We don't know what the duck's eating in the water, So a lot of our food sources that kept us healthy historically are foods that we can't either acquire or we shouldn't eat anymore because of all of the toxins, So, yeah, I'm not sure how much longer I have.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Yes, that's been 15 minutes, Elder Kat. So whenever you're ready to wrap up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's so much to say, there's so much more to say. Just that we are, it's about time that we get fair treatment because me and many others are talking at universities, all across the land, sharing our experiences, sharing what the government has done to indoctrinate their minds to not the fact, but that the ideology that we are less than, but we lived with the land. We didn't try to control the land. And that was a big part of our downfall. Another one is that we don't own land. So we did a lot of things naturally with the environment that led the government to say, well, you don't own this land, so we can take it, So yeah, thank you for listening, everyone. And I really appreciate Marissa, this invitation to be a part of this. I'm learning just as much as I want to share about my people. And I need to learn more about this so I can be a better help to my mother. And yeah, Haichkasian.
Thank you so much, Elder Kat. And thank you to all of our panelists. I would like to reintroduce Maple Ridge City Councilor Youssef, who will ask our panelists a few of the questions that have been posed by the audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. My apologies for my minor injury. Before we commence with the question and answer period, I'd like to take this opportunity to sort of wrap up where we are. First and foremost, thanking our panelists for their wonderful input. I've been taking diligent notes, and when I said I was going to learn lots, you have delivered. So thank you very much for that. Here in Canada, we do have an aging population, and we realize that. So it's incumbent upon us to provide and care for our elders today and have those models and means in place for when our turn comes. So I implore those that are listening, as well as the general public, to really consider that while we may be doing what is perceived to be a service for others today, it ultimately serves us in the long run. Unfortunately, our culture has come about in a way that allows for isolation and loneliness, especially in our golden years when we need it the most. That stigma that has been mentioned by our panelists is something that I've experienced as a newcomer to Canada myself, as an immigrant, as a visible minority. And it's soul killing. It drives right through your heart that this person in front of you is not even looking at you. They're looking at the exterior and not considering you to be an equal. As Ms. Norris has mentioned numerous times, there is this notion that others are less than. That's something that we as a society, we as Canadians, have to actively work against. And the fight starts within before we can approach others and begin to really disseminate that thought and philosophy. Family supports for those struggling with dementia and mental health issues later on in life are, as we heard, limited. And in some cases, while the family themselves may want to provide the care, they may not have the skill set or the ability needed to do so. On the other side, or I should say on the same side, my apologies, the caregivers as well. We need to look at people and really consider what is the backstory. The greater community must come together and truly love one another for the sake of loving one another as humans, as equals. Remember that we are all on this journey together. We are, to quote Ms. Norris, one big family. We truly are. We all bleed red. I've tried it. I'm a regular blood donor, not in a malicious way. As was also mentioned, I'd like to highlight the stressors in nutrition and the dietary aspect of our lives. We ought to be able to take care of ourselves and take care of those around us, starting with taking care of our environment and our surroundings. We are blessed here in Maple Ridge and in the Lower Mainland in Canada and in BC, where we have that ability. We have access to a gorgeous nature that is unmatched anywhere else in the world. Let's take care of each other. Let's take care of our earth. Let's take care of one another and look at each other as human beings. I've been brought to tears a couple times this morning. Luckily, my video was up. You guys don't want to see that. Hearing firsthand accounts of those who've survived the ethnic cleansing that took place. And I realized the weight of my words when I say that. I've studied international relations, and it was nothing short of ethnic cleansing. Those who survived are our true heroes. They are the ones that we ought to be looking toward for our strength as we move forward, so that we can teach the following generations just how strong we as a family, as humans, can truly be. Let us start today by erasing that stigma and consider the backstory of our fellow human beings without passing judgment. If we start there, we're going to be in a good place. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to make those comments. Moving forward, I'd like to pose our first question to our panelists, and if I may ask, we'll go alphabetical order, if you don't mind. First name, so we'll start with Ms. Lund, followed by Ms. Norris, Ms. Jans, and then Ms. Cohen. If you would be so kind as to weigh in on the question that's been posed as to, does loneliness cause dementia? Thank you.
I need to unmute. Sorry. Hi. I wasn't sure if we need to answer in certain order, but I thought I'd just start here with the question. Great question. Does loneliness cause dementia? Here are some thoughts. I am not aware, or I'm not deeply aware of research. I do know that loneliness has a great incredible impact on our health, mental health, and physical health, and so well-being. And that also includes the brain health. And loneliness is often a big factor in depression. And there is, if we look at the causes of dementia, it's usually multiple different things. I can imagine that loneliness has an effect on the level of contributors to dementia. People with loneliness also tend to withdraw or are not really doing things, so movement and all those things have an impact on brain health, and so dementia, I think.
Excellent, thank you very much. Would Ms. Cohen care to weigh in on this as well, as to whether or not loneliness does cause dementia?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with Nadine in that, yeah, there are studies that show that loneliness is correlated with higher levels of dementia. So cause may be too strong a term, but definitely there are correlations because our ability to adapt to situations is decreased with when we are lonely. I should point out loneliness is subjective. It's something, it's a difference in the number and depths of contacts that we want as compared to those that we have. So you can be in a situation where you are actually in, say, an extended family household and still feel lonely. That's important to realize, because if people are out working, or if people say intergenerationally don't connect with you in the way that you would like, in the way that you want to be honored and respected, you can still feel lonely. So I think that's an important distinction to make as well.
Thank you very much for that. And moving on, if I may, to Ms. Norris specifically, the question has been posed, what can be done to support First Nations persons living with dementia?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with just understanding our history. If you understand our history, you'll understand, the individual. Our people don't tend to talk as fast as everyone else. We stop and think before we answer. It's something that we're taught quite young, to always be aware of what you're saying, because our words are powerful. And that frustrates a lot of people, especially for my mother as she got older. I had to bite my tongue, to ask people. So I'd stand behind her. I said, use my hand, And mother would stop and think, and then she would, let them know. So I basically, a lot of it has to do with patience, and understanding that family is so important. And I think the most important thing to most grandparents in general, but especially our Indigenous people, because what they want to do is to help teach the grandchildren. So asking about their family, asking about grandchildren is really important. Asking them if they use any, not all people use like the medicines like sage or, but they love things like Devil's Club rubs, for their feet, or even just to smell some cedar. Now they have cedar-based hand sanitizer. So it's all the little things that they like, And unfortunately, a lot of our elders like little treats like, the old-fashioned mints. So it could be everything from all the basic little things, but also doing some education with the staff, to have a bit more patience with our elders.
Thank you very much for that. My apologies for the muting and unmuting taking a couple of seconds. I just want to make sure that my microphone doesn't interfere with your answers. Moving on, if I may, to Ms. Lung, as this question has a bit to do with your presentation and the comments that you've made. How much would you say anger plays a part in dementia? And of course, a follow-up question to possibly Ms. Cohen and Ms. Jens is it a cause? And if it is a cause, is it a primary cause or a secondary cause? And back to Ms. Lung, for the caregivers specifically, do you find that your anger, the anger that you're experiencing and feeling, is predominantly because of the healthcare providers that don't have the cultural awareness or don't have the individualistic, viewpoint when it comes to working with those suffering from dementia?
That's what I say is the frustration is one thing is because we both don't understand what is the demand of the resident, the patient. So and then for the education, it's very important for the staff. Okay, for my experience, I find out the social experience is really bad. Just what I say is when I go for traveling, so I have a hard time in the security because they don't understand what is the Alzheimer look like, and they thinking about disabled is for the people they are using the wheelchair, but actually it's not. And then they rush me, hurry, okay, can you hurry, take the luggage to there? And then to make up a lot of hard time for Tony is, can you turn around, okay, hold your hand, something like that. So it's really, really frustration. So I think I mentioned in one meeting in Alzheimer Society when they hold, I said the social education is very important. So the thing is Alzheimer is not only memory. The thing is they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to handle it. We have to understand about that. So and for the facility, I think that I used to be a LPN. I used to be an educator, and then the funding for the government. In Alberta, they have 100 residents. They has to be one educator. But when I move in here, I find out they don't have that funding for that. So for those education for the staff is so important. So for me, I work as a nurse. I take care of Alzheimer patients for a long time, 20 years. But I find out it's totally different from I take care of my loved one. So that's what I part is to say is if we can cut down for those aggression, okay, that I think the education is very important for them.
Yeah, for me, I wanted to say that, from what I understand, my mother would get frustrated and angry, when people would not understand her, because from what she wants and what she's saying is correct in her mind, but it doesn't come out the same way. And I've had to check my own anger and frustration before I really understood what was going on. My mother and I would have it out, and because we're both headstrong people, and then we both settle down, and then we both have a laugh about it, and I love her so much, and I'm so close to her, being the oldest. She was a traditional marriage, had me when she was 17 years old. And she used to tease me. I used to tease her when I was about 16, about how old she was. And she goes, "Don't laugh, you're not that far behind me." And when I turned 40 years old, I realized how close we were in age, but I don't think anger causes it, but ongoing, unhealed anger can be a cause for many health issues. But I don't think it's a cause of Alzheimer's, but it's just one of those that doesn't help. But when people don't understand them and they can't, I would get frustrated if I kept getting mixed up with my words and people didn't understand me, so yeah.
And Ms. Jans, would you like to weigh in on the question, please?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's such a great question and so common. Anger, loneliness, sadness, grief, the pain, powerless. And just a few thoughts also that underneath anger, there can be anxiety. So anger can be a defense, right? And it can be a trauma response too. So if you talk about cultural hurt in relation to other people in the society, and it's so hurtful, and so anger can be a normal reaction to that too, that feeling powerless and old trauma that can be reactivated. Also want to acknowledge that anger underneath the pain and the hurt for caregivers, feeling frustrated like Alice and Elder Cat were talking about too, very common. People with dementia feeling anger, not feeling heard, loved, and seen. So it's actually a normal emotion, but a very difficult one. And that's where we need to help building those connections and help regulate, connect, and attune and support each other as a society, as individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Cohen, if I may get your input on this question as well.
Yeah, so let me just put a little bit of a different twist on it. The perspectives that we're looking at are those of older immigrants specifically. And I think one of the important things to realize is that there's a whole other layer of causes of frustration if you are an older immigrant, in large part because of language. People can be in a long-term care facility, for example, with dementia. And even if they spoke English when they were younger, as the dementia sets in, and I lived in Alert Bay, and this happened to elders as well, Kwakwaka'wakw elders, they could speak English, and then that would go with the dementia. And so then they weren't able to communicate what they needed, and it's already hard enough because of the dementia, but then you've got the language issue on top of that. And just different cultural expectations that people have, when I interact with older Punjabis, I know that they have expectations of their grandchildren that aren't necessarily consistent with the expectations that would be there for other grandchildren. So, younger family members don't necessarily understand, if they're girls, say, why they shouldn't wear shorts, or why they should always bring tea when there's a guest, why, they should rub their elders' feet and things like that, right? That's normal. And why aren't they doing that? Because maybe they've been raised here before the older family member moved here. And so there just weren't things that were instilled in them. So all of those things are a source of upset as well, frustration, because they see them as disrespect. So this is just one small example of, a cultural layer to it. So I think those are important things to realize. And then once your level of reasoning is compromised by the dementia, it's so very easy to become angry, right? Because of those things. So yeah, but not a cause, but definitely lots of correlations. Yeah.
Certainly, and I can relate to that, having experienced some of that myself. My apologies, Ms. Norris, you wanted to add something concerning loneliness?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that that my mother, I noticed, like, I try to call her every day, every evening, because that's when she likes to talk to people on the phone. And when I was talking about the time we had it out pretty bad, and I didn't call her. I'll call her tomorrow, because I was still holding a childhood resentment, or childish resentment. And then came Sunday, and I'll call her tomorrow, Monday evening. Anyway, by actually it was Tuesday or so, 4 days later, when my brother and sister-in-law went to go visit her, and they did a Zoom, and she looked so lost. You know, so I was really upset with myself. Because if you contact them, you know, often, every day, they have something to look forward to. So yeah, the contact is so important. I'm trying to encourage families, you know, it doesn't matter how you get along, just take a chance and give a call, you know. So now she's in a 14-day isolation before she moves into a care home. And she's with other people. My brother did a Zoom. But now I'm having a hard time because I can't call her to say, hey, Mom, Dancing with the Stars is on. You know, she loves Dancing with it. So it's hard on me, you know, not being able to talk to her. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you for that. And that speaks truly to how global, if you will, for lack of a better word, dementia and Alzheimer's are. It not only affects the person who is struggling with it, but it affects their family, their extended family, and the entire society. And therefore, to close out, since we've got about 9 minutes before we run out of time, if I may get your ladies' input on how can we, moving forward as a society, as a community, as a country, really lead the way in reducing that stigma and doing away with the frustrations and the angers that result from those, and begin to really heal as a society.
I think we should start with Kat and Alice.
Oh, Alice.
Hi, I have no.
I was hoping we'd go to Nadine.
Yeah, you guys go ahead. Hi.
Yeah, if you don't mind, we'll go there. We'll start with Ms.
Thank you. Okay. Oh yeah, so many things I think that we can do. But definitely, first of all, again, Marissa and Yusuf and Warren and everybody here, also everybody here listening today and to the recording also, just even that learning and education is key. Elder Kat and Alice, your courage to share your personal stories is, and Dr. Kuhn, I think this is really powerful, and we need to keep educating each other and also being open to hear these stories also. Government needs to step in with education, providing resources, more resources, also for caregivers. They're often so lonely on their journey. And they are the ones who need to support, facilitate the persons with dementia. I also agreed with the COVID protocols that they need to change for family members. This is really heartbreaking. I can go on, but yeah, some of those things.
Thank you for that. If I may, Ms. Lund, if you'd like to.
I don't know what to say. I find out the family, they really need the education too. Just like yesterday, I talked to one of the LPN when I saw my husband. He said some family, even they don't know how's the progress of this disease. And they always complain about why my mom is like that, why my dad is like that. Okay, so they need to understand it's progressing. Okay, so I really understand my husband, why it's like that. Now since the pandemic he lost 20 pounds. It used to be 160, now it's only 140, and the back is leaning forward. So it's not only the pandemic, it is really progressing. It's this disease make him like that. So I really have to understand about that. So I think if the facility they can provide some family education, then I think the family probably will be easier to go with this stage. So won't be that frustration. And I think some family member, they phone me, they always complain on the phone, and I don't know what to do, the staff is no good, blah, 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 blah. But actually I explained to them it's because the disease. So that's why I said it takes 10 years from monitoring, coaching, and total care. So I know it cannot do it that much. It just make the resident and the family, I mean, my husband is comfortable, have a better life, and that's it.
Thank you. And lastly, if I may get Ms. Cohen's input on how can we as a society really try to work against this stigma?
Yeah, okay. That's a big question. I think there are a lot of things I have to say. There are a number of different ways to approach it. And I mentioned there were some tools on my website that you might want to check out, because one of the things we did was put together a curriculum for new immigrants around dementia. The curriculum is targeted at people who are going to be working in healthcare, but many of those people working in healthcare are going to be working with people with dementia. So, you know, you have to be creative about ways of raising awareness, for example, and that's one way. Also being creative about helping people to how to talk to the family doctors. So another one of the things that we've got is a video in Korean that was put together by, you know, in response to our research findings, and immigrant serving agencies and so on helped us understand what it was that Korean populations needed to ask the doctor when they go. What kinds of questions do they need? So those are sort of more at the community level. I think just sort of going really macro here though, we have before us a really amazing opportunity as a society. Two things have happened during COVID, two big reveals. One of them is the state of long-term care and the way that we treat our elders, and absolute pandemic that pre-existed COVID of loneliness around the world. So all of that has been revealed. And then the second thing is Black Lives Matter. And people are really starting to pay attention, right? I see all kinds of hires in the university and the health authorities for people to work on Indigenous issues, for example, and really coming to terms with that history and, owning it and, admitting responsibility for it as a society is huge. And similarly, taking responsibility for the ways in which we other and stigmatize new immigrants. It's not okay. So, hopefully this is the kind of message that is being heard more now through the pandemic. And I hope that we can, hold on to this as we plan for a new beginning after this.
Thank you very much. And lastly, I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Norris for our last comments.
Yeah, thank you. I think we need more education. We need more people to get involved in seniors and elders care, but we need to get more emphasis on the word care, and not just, get involved with the medical profession, knowing all the words and all the medicines and etc. But I think that's what's missing is the caring part of the profession. And, also we need to tell the stories. We need to share these seniors and elders stories out there and not hide it anymore. And that once you think that something is not right, do something then and don't wait. We don't need to be ashamed of, we don't need to be ashamed anymore. We need to tell the stories.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. And you said it, it's early response early on. With that, I'd like to thank our panelists for their wonderful input and outstanding participation in today's question and answer session. And I'll turn it right back over to Ms. Stalman.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. I'm really at a loss of words for just how pleased I am that we had the opportunity to gather today. I want to sincerely thank the panelists, and I want to thank the United Way of the Lower Mainland for funding this webinar, and Marissa Bell for her assistance with the grant process. Thank you to Yusuf and to Warren, and to all of you who took time out of your afternoon to be with us today. If you've been affected by dementia, personally or professionally, I would encourage you to reach out to the Alzheimer's Society of BC First Link Dementia Hotline. You can learn more about this resource by visiting the Alzheimer's Society of BC website. For service in English, you can call 1-800-936-6033. Services are also available in Cantonese, Mandarin, and Punjabi. The recording of this webinar will be available on our event website in approximately 1 week. I would encourage you to please share the recording with your networks. If you visit our event website, which is listed here, local-love-webinar.gerogeek.ca, you will also be able to link to Nadine Jan's and Sharon Cohen's websites. If you have any questions or feedback, I would invite you to please send an email to me at m_Stallman@sfu.ca. Wishing you all health and happiness during the holiday season. Stay safe. And thank you to our panelists.